So, tank tuning in the War Within. With the introductions of the Dragonfly talent system and season-over-season changes, tanks in World of Warcraft have become extremely durable relative to non-tank characters. Their active defenses can mitigate high percentages of incoming damage, and they have strong self-healing. Today, in the hardest content in the game, many tanks can sustain themselves without much assistance from healers. In some cases, we've seen it become optimal to do group content without a healer at all. Okay, so this sentence, I agree, yes, this is true, but the main problem is not that the tanks can survive without a healer. The main problem is that the damage dealers can survive without a healer, right? I would argue that is the problem more than the tanks surviving, right? Because the tanks, there were many expansions where tanks were able to survive without healers a long time, right? Especially in Mythic Plus where you can kite. So I think the fact that tanks are tanky is not the main issue with the healer dropping. World of Warcraft is an MMO, and its multiplayer aspects are a major strength. Group content is extremely rewarding when players performing different roles come together to overcome a challenge. We want to reinforce the importance of the healer role and work towards gameplay where tanks and healers collaborate to reduce the damage the tank is taking. See, I agree with them, but I have a feeling that they're changing tanks to make healers more relevant, when in my opinion, that is the wrong approach. To make healers more relevant, they need to make damage dealers' defensives less good. I think that's the main reason why healers are struggling right now, because damage dealers are too tanky. I don't think the tanks being too tanky is the main problem. I think the damage dealers being too tanky is the main problem, right? I don't think nerfing tank survivability is gonna solve the healer problem in any fun and interactive way, because which healer likes healing tanks? Because tank healing is just like sitting there casting single target heals on a tank. It's much more engaging and fun to keep the group alive rather than tank healing. Like group healing, you know, you can anticipate it. Group healing, you know, okay, this boss is an AoE in 10 seconds. I'm going to prepare for this damage. The boss does this in like a little bit, so I'm going to prepare for that. Like group healing is much more intuitive, and you can prepare yourself for it, and you can get better at it by learning the dungeons, the bosses. Like you get a better feeling for how much damage is there on the group is going to be. Tank damage, on the other hand, is not like that. Tank damage is it's incredibly situational. Like, first of all, there's a lot of RNG in tank damage with melee hits. In addition, you're so dependent on the tank pressing certain defensives or not pressing them. So a healer healing a tank, in my opinion, is always going to be less fun to be a requirement than a healer having to heal the group more, right? Because of that reason. Because if I heal a tank, all of a sudden as a healer, I need to be aware of what the tank is doing. Like I need to track the tank's defensives. I need to track the tank's mitigation. I need to know when the tank is pressing what. I need to know what kind of damage the mobs do to the tank. Do these mobs do magic damage? Do these mobs do physical damage? Does my tank have physical mitigation? Does my tank have magic mitigation, right? Like, I feel like it's a lot more complex and not very intuitive to be responsible for tank survivability as a healer rather than group survivability. So I think shifting responsibility for tank survivability to a healer is not solving the healer problem. Like you might actually achieve what you're trying to achieve to make healers more important, but not in a way that people would want to be more important, I think. Tank durability can cause some other problems as well, especially in challenging endgame content that we want to work towards improving. Okay, well that is something that I can see. This point, I agree with. If tank durability is a problem when it comes to boss design, then I can agree with that they would need to fix that. Enemy damage is increased to challenge tanks, but it's increased too much. It gets spiky and puts tanks in significant danger if their defenses ever drop. This can lead to tanks getting killed rapidly, seemingly out of nowhere. We feel this is unsatisfying and would prefer tank damage to generally be evenly distributed, but still threatening over time. So this, I guess I agree with. This I like. If tanks are not threatened enough, then the most challenging part of endgame content can become keeping DPS and healers alive, often against high burst damage. Making tank survival a more involving element of group gameplay could give us some freedom to ease up on the threat to other group members. Interesting. Okay, so they're basically saying that they maybe want to nerf incoming group damage because healers have to heal the tanks more. Okay, that's interesting. So they're kind of trying to circumvent the group defensive issue by making the healers heal the tank more. Interesting. I mean, this is for sure the easier approach when it comes to the amount of things you have to change. Because nerfing the tank survivability is much easier than nerfing every damage dealer survivability. And people will also maybe be less mad about it. I'll see how this works out. I don't think this is gonna be that much fun to healers, and to tanks for that matter, but we'll see. To address the above, we're making reductions to tank durability and self-healing. This will allow us to smooth out the damage tanks and parties take while retaining the challenge of keeping them alive over time. We'll take those changes into account in encounter tuning as well. Tanks will take more damage overall, but shouldn't die significantly more often. To increase the overall damage tanks take and their reliance on healers, we're primarily increasing the percentage of damage they take after mitigation from steady damage sources like physical attacks. We're making fewer reductions to each class defensives against burst damage, other threats that are currently most likely to be lethal to them. Counters will be tuned with this in mind, so the character of tank damage changes, but the lethality of it doesn't significantly increase. Tank damage intake should be steady and not too fast. One of our goals for these changes is to smooth out the rate tanks take damage to reduce surprise spiky deaths. Healers should have time to respond to tank health, and tanks should have time to use self-heals like Word of Glory or Celestial Brew. For some classes, we're increasing their passive defenses to compensate for decreases to more active or reactive defensive mechanics. Tank busters will still create challenging moments and reward tanks for planning and smart use of cooldowns. Tanks will still have strong answers to threats or periods of danger, but less sustained self-healing. Healing gameplay should not be dominated by tank healing. Healers play a critical role, and keeping tanks alive is part of what they bring to the table. However, healers contribute to the success of groups in many ways, especially in dungeons. They sustain the group, dispel harmful effects, and respond to burst damage. All while doing mechanics, tank healing should not demand so much that it interferes with their other roles. It may take some iteration to get the balance right on this, where healers feel essential to tank survival, but with their attention not overly demanded by it. Yeah, okay, so I don't generally disagree with this. If they get this right, like, I know that tanks are going to be upset about this because tanks don't like needing to be healed. The more survivability tanks have and the less reliant they are on a healer, the more they like it, right? But I personally think that it's not by default like a super bad thing that the healers have to heal a tank. If you're fully reliant on the healer to keep you alive, that of course sucks. But if you're just reliant a little bit here and there that the healer heals you, that's fine. Like, I personally think it's fine that the tanks are a bit more reliant on healers. The fact that tanks literally just don't need a healer, it has gotten a little bit out of hand. I do think that the survivability of a tank should still be a high percentage, should still be on the tank, right? Like, I still think 80 to 90% of the tank survivability should come from the tank. But I think shifting some responsibility to the healer, I think is okay. Like, it's not going to be the end of the world. I mean, the reason why Blood Decay was so good was not because of their self-healing that they had. The reason why Blood Decay was so good was mainly because of Mass Grip. That was incredibly OP. And they had this aura that gave you Leech. That was super OP in Legion. Because in Legion, a lot of bosses were very deadly. The main thing in Legion about being able to do dungeons in time, or to be able to do dungeons at all, was to survive boss fights, because the timers were not that hard in Legion, and plus it was mainly just surviving. And you would survive, what was it called, the aura? It was like Blood Aura or something. It was super OP. Healers are not equipped to do good tank healing. Why not, though? Like, to say that a healer is not equipped to heal a tank, like, that's just wrong. That you're basically saying that a healer cannot do single target heals. Basically what they're saying is, they want to make tanks a little bit more reliant on healers, in a sense that if they don't receive any healing at all for a longer period of time, that the tanks will eventually die and not be alive forever. It's not mana efficient for a healer to single target heal, but you're not supposed to single target heal forever. Like, I don't think they're trying to achieve a situation where the tank dies within 5 seconds if you don't get heals, right? From what I am reading here, that's at least their goal, is that. I don't think they're trying to change tank to say, oh, the healer didn't heal you for 2 seconds, well, you're dead now. It's more like, oh, the healer didn't heal you for 30 seconds or a minute, well, I guess you're out of cooldowns, well, I guess you die. You know? So they're basically trying to reduce consistent self-healing and consistent mitigation. They're not trying to nerf like big DRs or big defensives or like big cooldowns in general. They're basically trying to nerf, as far as I'm understanding here, they're trying to nerf self-healing that can keep you alive forever. Like this like permanent self-healing that tanks do, or permanent mitigation, permanent absorb, that you just have for all of the time, always. They're trying to have it so you slowly whittle down if you don't get healing from an outside source. If that is what they achieve, then I think that's fine. Like, imagine there's like a passive aura that does damage to you, and it just like slowly kills you if, you know, you don't have any more self-healing left at some point, or any defensives left, or if there's no healer that heals you. Take one of the least played roles and make it less fun to play. But it doesn't have to be necessarily less fun to play. That's the thing. Like, I understand that people get angry. Tanks want to be responsible for their own thing. But the thing is, I don't think everyone wants that. I definitely think that the tanks that are currently maining tank, I've heard this opinion a lot, that they would like to be responsible for themselves. Like, they just want to do their own thing, not be reliant on anyone else. They just want to be the tank, right? I get that. But I do think that being more reliant on a healer also like relieves a bit of the pressure of that. Because one issue with tanking is also like the fact that you are so self-reliant. Because the more self-reliant you are, the more like pressure is on you and the more responsibilities on you, right? Now, this change is not gonna change that by a mile. Like, obviously you're still gonna have to press your buttons right to survive. But it is a little bit intimidating as a player that plays a damage dealer to all of a sudden go tank, and then all of a sudden, if you make a mistake, you die and you wipe, and like it has like pretty big. And not to mention the fact that a tank has to do everything in a dungeon, right? A tank has to do the route. A tank has to figure out what to pull. A tank has to call in drops. A tank has to basically do everything, and if they don't, then somehow people are blaming you, right? On top of being able to survive all of the stuff by not getting any help from anyone else. And if you die as a tank, it's your fault, and the healer couldn't have done anything, really. So I don't think it's always bad to shift responsibility away from the tank. If you really like tanking, then it sucks. But to encourage more people to play tank, I don't think this is a bad change. Or what do you think? People are overreacting because number down equals bad. People should definitely give this a try first. Because obviously they are nerfing the numbers a lot, which, yeah, I agree. It immediately sounds like a bad thing. But they are changing the incoming damage. You have to keep that in mind, right? They're not just nerfing your survivability, they're also changing the incoming damage that you take. Maybe it feels better. Like, it's very possible that tanking feels better with these changes. I'm not saying it will, but it is very possible. If the damage that you take is less spiky, because that is something that I think that also kind of sucks with current tanking, is that you just get one-shot sometimes as a tank. If you don't know like what the mob does, how much damage an ability does and whatever. Like, the tank damage is very spiky at the moment, which is super intimidating for new tanks as well. So if the incoming damage is less spiky and more like consistent, I think that might be more fun. Could be, at least. I'm not saying it will, right? But I definitely think that tanks should be testing this out first before they immediately go in with like a super negative opinion. I think it's a bad change, but test it first. So this might be interesting. If they're changing the incoming group damage to compensate for the healer having to heal a tank more, that will be a good thing. Because right now, it's not just the tank damage that is really spiky, it's also the group damage that is really spiky, which sucks for everyone. Can we balance healers to have a meaningful impact on tanks' health? The healer is strong enough to substantially affect tank HP, then that same heal would basically top DPS health. I mean, of course you can. Like, healers have tank healing functions, right? Because this is not supposed to be big spiky heals that the healer does to the tank. It's supposed to be consistent heal. The way I understand this. We're not speaking of like a lay on hands kind of heal that puts the tank from 10% to full. We're talking about consistent heal that keeps the tank alive through consistent low damage, not consistent high spiky damage, right? So we don't need to give the healers abilities that put the tank from 1 HP to 100%. We need to give the healer abilities that has like passive healing on the tank. For example, Beacon from a paladin, right? So you heal the group, tank gets some passive heal. Life Bloom and Hots from a Resto Druid, right? You get Life Bloom, some Rejuve on a tank, move on. Heal the group. Stuff like that, you know? They're basically just saying that these passive heals that you leave on a tank, and this is how healing worked before. Like, I feel like people forgot how healing worked in the past. Like, in the past, you had to heal the tank a little, which was not the end of the world. Like, this is not a completely new concept that we've never had in the game. It is actually true that in the past, healers had to heal the tank a little. So we get Shadowlands Kite meta again. Why? Like, they were iterations of the game where the healers had to heal the tank passively so the tank can stay alive, but didn't have to sit there and spam heal the tank, which was fine. And tanking wasn't bad there either. People didn't hate tanking in BFA, and healers didn't hate healing in BFA that much either, so... Like, if they manage to achieve a situation like that, where the healers passively heal the tank a bit and they actually require that passive healing, then that would be good. I'm not saying that they will achieve that, but that's kind of what they're writing they want to achieve, right? The raid used to have a tank healer. Well, I don't think we need a tank healer anymore. I think that would be a little bit far. Can we delete Augevoker first and then start changing other stuff? Man, I just wish we could. If only we could delete Augevoker. It would make me so happy. I still think, and I keep saying this until they fucking do it, yeah? I still think that Augevoker wouldn't be as big of an issue if they would just stop fucking fucking buffing the healer and the tank. Like, just stop it. Why does the tank and the healer get main stat from the Augevoker? And why do we have blistering scales and all of these like buffs to tanking? Like, if they would just stop with that, then I think Augevoker would be a lot more balanced. In return, they can make them buff the damage dealers more, of course, because they have to compensate somehow. But the fact that they buff the healer and the tank so much is a big issue. I personally like absolutely hate that. And they're still strong, even without buffing the healer and the tank, but that in itself is just an issue, I think.